Okay, my name's Jeffrey Katz, and Whaling City Software is the company I started in 1977 to design and program custom applications for regional industries. In the early 2000s, I moved my core business toward commercial PC network design and implementation services, and now provide IT hardware, software, and services to more than 24 small to mid-sized local companies, and consulting services for large regional ones who have their own IT departments, doing mostly commercial network design, installation, security, and support. We specialize in network hyperconverged technology on Lenovo file servers for large companies, Microsoft Windows Server and Synology NAS systems for small to medium-sized companies. I've already done 2 BNUG presentations about Nutanix hyperconvergence, which is the top end of implementing a virtual infrastructure for our large customers. For mid-sized customers, we typically implement file servers running the Microsoft Windows Server operating system, often along with network-attached storage, or just network-attached storage without a Windows file server for the smallest ones who simply need to share data files. I had originally scheduled a full network-attached storage using Synology presentation for the March BNUG meeting, which got postponed till tonight. Since then, I've been fortunate to get Joshua Douglas, the New England Technical Account Manager for Synology, to present his company's products and do a live demo for us. So I will instead just do an introduction to NAS Synology, turn it over to Joshua. If we go back to the beginning of PCs and PC networks in the mid-1980s, computer hardware was very expensive and very unreliable. Any failed component could be replaced, but when a disk drive crashed, which was a pretty common occurrence back then, the data it held was typically lost, often irretrievably so if no backups were available. Even with hardware that is now so much more reliable than it was then, there were still 2 ways to protect computer data, which is to spread it redundantly over a set of multiple disks and keep it backed up. So to focus on the first point, when PC-based networks were first being designed, file servers were introduced that were essentially high-powered computers with the most advanced technology to safely and securely support the demands of sharing data among multiple users. For data storage, instead of using a single hard drive like a desktop computer, a file server would contain multiple drives for a larger total storage capacity and have a disk controller that included RAID, which is an acronym for Redundant Array of Independent Disks. RAID effectively spreads all the data across all the disks, called data striping, while simultaneously duplicating the contents of each disk across the others, called mirroring. With this type of storage system, if a hard drive in a RAID array failed, the file server could continue to run because all of the data was still available. And when the failed drive was replaced, it would automatically get its contents restored to regain the array's protection. Commercial file servers were significantly more expensive than regular desktop computers and also required purchasing an expensive file server operating system and supporting applications. Around the same time, companies started developing network-attached storage, or NAS drives, to offer additional shared storage for Novell NetWare-based networks. And soon after that, NAS drives that included built-in file server capabilities for independent data sharing. A NAS includes a CPU, memory, USB and Ethernet ports, and room for 1 or many internal disk drives, and a dedicated NAS operating system along with supporting applications. A NAS model is chosen primarily for its capacity and performance, so you do need an estimate of how many users, which applications, and how much total storage space is required. Some NAS devices include the disk drives, but most do not, so you typically must select, purchase, and install the appropriate drives. There is a large variety of drive brands, types, capacities, and performances available, and the huge number of possible combinations makes it very difficult for a NAS manufacturer to predetermine what a customer may want. The primary reasons for using a NAS are for increasing storage capacity, ease of installation, data safety, security, and optimized data sharing. So examining these in detail, computer drives have fixed capacities, we all know that, So when you need more storage, you can either replace the existing drive with a larger one or add additional internal or external drives. With a NAS, disk drives can easily be added and logically combined to look like one or more larger ones. And as an external device, it can easily be added to a standalone or a networked environment without any disruptions to the environment. For data safety, the RAID technology that I previously mentioned, along with built-in and backup and synchronization applications, offer protection in case of the entire NAS or for disk fails. For security, a NAS can be incorporated into Active Directory if a Microsoft Windows server is being used. Otherwise, the NAS has its own implementation of Active Directory, like of an AD-like security system, which would include users, groups, passwords, file and folder level, read, write, and restricted access, plus encryption. A NAS adds storage capacity to your environment that is centralized, shareable, scalable, and protectable. And in addition, modern NAS systems now include a variety of useful dedicated consumer and business applications to increase their versatility and value from a simple storage target to a multi-purpose application server. Now on the downside, NAS data access times can be slower than having directly connected storage, especially if you're using a low-end model. A NAS cannot natively host common Windows-based applications like Microsoft SQL or Intuit QuickBooks Data Engine, although some of the newer ones now can spin up a virtual machine, and that VM can be a Windows instance running those applications. And that capability now also makes them an inexpensive alternative to an on-site backup and failover device. If you're familiar, similar to what like a Datto or Zerto device can do. So to sum up, a NAS is a non-Windows file server that lets you easily and inexpensively share and protect data in a home or business environment, or add additional storage capacity and capabilities to a Microsoft Windows server, VMware, or a Nutanix hyperconverged mid to large size business environment. As most of you know, I strive at choosing the best technology for my customers and the best manufacturer of those technologies. I chose Synology more than 10 years ago for their wide variety of products and commitment to customer support. And with more than 7 million units sold, they have since become the leading NAS company with about 27% of the total NAS market. Their consumer, business, and enterprise product lines have grown substantially to about 40 NAS models and now includes about 140 applications, most of which are included for free. So at this point, I would like to welcome Joshua Douglas to BNUG, thank him for his gracious offer to present tonight, and turn it over to him for the full Synology presentation and live demo. Joshua?
Hey, Jeff. Thank you
Thanks.
so much. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joshua Douglas. I'll do a quick intro about me. So I am the technical account manager for Synology for the greater New England market. So I am in charge of, pretty much all of the SMB to enterprise level businesses in terms of resellers for Synology. So I am based in our Washington, D.C., or District of Columbia office here in the East Coast. And then we also have another office that is based in Seattle, Washington. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen here to get things started. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and get started in talking about, who Synology is, right? So as Jeff said, Synology has been around for a while. So we actually have been around for 20 years. Starting with 2020, and we are actually are from Taipei, Taiwan. So that's where our global headquarters is from, and that is actually where we originated from. So, and that's where we continue to manufacture 100% of our Synology NAS products, which also helps us be TAA compliant, so we can be implemented in a variety of United States government applications, which we currently are. in multiple departments, including defense, NASA, etc. So, again, also as Jeff said, we are the world leader in NAS manufacture and deployment. So we've actually deployed a little over 7 million units worldwide. So, and again, we have offices around the world, and again, bringing it a little bit closer to home. We have one in, the DC area, and then one in Seattle, Washington. All right. So the next part is media recognition. So, one of the main reasons why Synology is the global leader in network attached storage is because we've won numerous awards, right, for quality and support and functionality and the value that comes with it, right, all those free applications that Jeff was talking about. And PC Mag is, I think, one that a lot of consumers probably know about or have read at one point or another, right? And as most recently as a couple weeks ago when the 2020 awards came out, we have won both the Reader's Choice Award for the consumer market as well as the SMB or the Business Choice Award since both of those awards have come into conception. So, both 10 straight years as well as a 6-time winner for that SMB category. All right, and please, as Adam said, if you guys have questions or comments about anything, please feel free to unmute yourself or post something in the chat. So as you can see here, this is some of the variety of products that we manufacture. So Synology manufactures products that are, a 1-bay, for instance, our DS119J there on the bottom left of your screen. That's, a very entry level, you can probably, I think, get for less than $100, right? All the way up to our FS and UC products, which is enterprise level, where, you might not see a lot deployed, but, for those who have visited, the theater before all this COVID stuff happened, right? For instance, most major picture corporations and studios store their feature films and run them on our FS series, right? So we manufacture everything from a DS to a $100 unit all the way up to the FSs, which is a 2 petabyte, server. That's a little over $10,000, not including the drives themselves. So, well, we make a wider range of products that suit a wider range of needs, right? So, when we're looking at this product line, you can see that can get sort of confusing, right? And sort of break it down, for everybody. If you're a consumer out there, right, you don't own your own business, you're going to primarily be looking at that J or that value series. So sort of in that lighter blue category, right? And these are going to be your 1 to, we do have that 8-bay, but primarily that 1 to that 4-bay configuration there, right? It's going to be primarily your DiskStations, or what we classify as a desktop station, right? Which is going to be a non-rack mount style, NAS or a server, right? As most consumers don't have a rack or a cage, somewhere in their house. Now, these are going to be primarily for basic file sharing, right? It's going to be for media storage and media streaming, right? So if you're somebody who is a residential consumer and wants a secondary place to store their pictures, right? Or store their music, videos, right? And they don't want to store it all on their phone, or don't want to store it all on, the iCloud or a random USB drive laying around, right? This would be a pretty perfect use case for a J or a value series, right? And, as some of the benefits that Jeff said, some of the things that you cannot do with a USB drive, or even if you go buy a Western Digital, drive at Best Buy, right? There's some things that you just can't do with it, right? And one of the most important things is being able to upgrade it over time, right? With a Synology NAS unit, you're able to expand the storage, right? And expand that volume either by adding more drives, right? If you have an open drive bay, or you can add it by buying a higher, capacity drive and swapping it out, right, to expand your volume. So you have sort of have that flexibility there as well as being able to things like adding RAM, right? So you definitely have that scalability there with the J and that value series. Now, moving up to the Plus series and above, again, I'm not going to get too granular with each of the different types of features that one offers and one doesn't, but the Plus series and above is for our business-centric type of customer. So if you own your own business, or if you're a large residential customer and you have multiple what we classify as workstations or desktops or laptops out there, and you want to be able to do things like bare metal imaging of them, then the Plus series and above is going to be something that you want to be thinking about purchasing instead of that J and that value, right? Now some of the key differences is that if you're thinking about a Plus or a J in value is really utilizing our applications that we'll talk about later in the presentation, right? So the Plus series and above utilize a file system called BTRFS, which allows you to take advantage of multiple different types of Synology applications that do things like deduplication and being able to send data securely from one Synology NAS to another, or pull it from an endpoint, whether that be a workstation or a physical server or even a VM, right, within Hyper-V or within VMware, that you cannot do with that J or that value series, right, beyond just your standard upgrades in terms of performance. Okay, and again, moving up to our our FS series and then our SA series, these are going to be enterprise level products, right? So most people on this call would probably never need something like this, right? This is going to be for people who need thousands, if not tens of thousands of users that are consistently accessing and reading and writing to that Synology NAS, right? And you have scalability up to 2 petabytes worth of storage and up to 480,000 plus random IOPS of performance power, right? So again, most people are going to need that capabilities, but that scalability and that performance is out there if you need it. Now, I know Jeff wanted to pause here and go to our website real quick, which we'll do at this time. So let me go right into that. And we're talking about selecting that perfect NAS for you, right? So on our website, right, on Synology.com, we have a couple of things that we're going to show you before we continue on with the rest of the PowerPoint presentation. And first is sort of that NAS selector, right? Very easy to get to, right? So if you go to Synology.com, you'll see our main website, and it talks about the variety of products and solutions and use cases, right? And as you scroll on down towards the bottom, there's a couple of selections here that we'll go through, right? And the first one is that NAS selector. So if you're unsure of the type of product that you would need, right, we have a handy dandy NAS selector to sort of help you through that process, right? So the first part is you're going to identify yourself on what we were talking about, right? Are you a business-centric user, or are you a small home or a residential customer? And then you're going to talk about what are you going to primarily needing a NAS for, right? And most people in that consumer market want to be able to conduct file sharing, right? Being able to back up and share files seamlessly, right? So we'll pick file server and synchronization. And then it's going to ask how many users are planning on accessing that NAS at any given time, right? So let's just say it's 1 to 5, right, for most consumers out there. And then it's going to pop out, a couple of NAS models that are recommended for you. So, as you can see, the vast majority of them are from that J or that value series product, right? And then you can select it and learn more about that particular NAS server, right? Now, Synology does not sell direct, right? So you can't buy it from here, right? We have a where to buy page, which would bring you to, resellers such as Jeff, or you can buy it on Amazon, or you can go on B&H, right, and purchase it from there. But the Synology does not conduct transactions with the consumer market, directly. Now, another nice thing that you can do on our website is view the wide range of products that we offer, right? So you would do that by going to our main homepage, going into products, And you can see the different types of products that we manufacture, right? If you're just looking for a NAS, or if you're looking for more of a networking type of solution, which would be a router, right, which we'll talk about here in a minute, or different types of surveillance, right? So Synology actually makes NDRs and DVA, servers. So, we go to products and we would go to view all NAS models, right? And that's going to bring us to that product list that we were just at. So, as you can see here, this is going to be all of our United States-based products that are available currently, right? Starting from the very high-performing FS series, right, moving down to our SA, right, which is our dual controller, active-passive style configure servers and NASs that actually use SAS drives, right? Then moving down to our XS series and above, right? These are going to be for, large businesses or enterprise level. And then moving down to our entry-level business types of NAS products, right? That start off with a DS218 Plus, right? And they move along to larger bays and capacities and different types of features, right? The DS1019 Plus is actually the server that will be logging in, which is, in Albany, and that will be the server that we're actually doing a lot of our demos on this afternoon, okay? And then moving down to our J and our values. So this is our consumer style. I believe somebody has a question, even though I can't see the chat. I saw chat go off. Oh, yes, sorry. Yeah, we'll get to that. And then, then bringing it down to our J series there with our consumer, grade products. Now, another neat thing to look at is our RAID calculator. So you would do that by getting to the same spot, right? So Synology.com, scrolling down, right? And you're going to see that RAID calculator. So Jeff, sort of explained why somebody, it doesn't matter, if you own your own business or not, why would somebody want RAID, right? And RAID is going to give you, a couple of different things, right? It's going to, give you a boost in performance, depending on the different, the RAID type that you select. Or more importantly, it's going to give you, what we'd call as data redundancy, right? Because hard drives fail all the time, whether it be SSD or HDDs, right? Whether it be spinning or not spinning. But regardless, drives do fail. I come across a lot of customers every single day, and whether it be, small residential customers that I come across, all the way up to, I was recently working with Worcester, which I believe is a town up there in Massachusetts, and a couple of their drives failed, and so we had to give them a couple of IP SAN solutions and stuff like that, right? So it doesn't matter who you are, drives can fail all the time, right? And this RAID calculator allows you to figure out, based on how much redundancy you want, how are you going to configure your particular server, right? So we do start off at 1 terabyte, but the math is the same, right? So don't, if you don't need a 1 terabyte drive, don't be afraid about that. You can select a 500 gigabyte drive if you want. So if we select one 1 terabyte drive, right, it's going to identify, based on your selection, what's going to be the best RAID type for you. Right now, for RAID, you need at least 2 drives. So it's going to tell you that, the best thing that we can do for you is a SHR or, a Synology hybrid RAID type of environment, which is suitable for consumer, right? So we don't recommend SHR for small businesses, but if you're a consumer out there and, you have different types of drives that are manufactured by different OEMs that are of different capacities, right? Your SHR or again, your hybrid RAID, right? Because we're talking about a hybrid of different types of drives within one Synology NAS is going to be your best selection. Now, if you move along to 2 terabytes, right, 2 drives utilized, you're going to be able to see that we now have the availability to, select different types of RAIDs, right? So now you have, your RAID 0, right? This is going to be primarily for people who are looking for performance, right? And we still have our SHR there, which allows for that 1 disk tolerance. Now, if you go up to 1 more drive, right, that's going to give you the most popular RAID configuration available, which is a RAID 5, right? This is going to be, for the vast majority of consumers and businesses out there, most of them in terms of a nice balance between performance and, data redundancy, your RAID 5 is going to give you that, right? And as you can see, It's, even though we have 3 1-terabyte drives in there, it's only going to give us a usable space of 2 terabytes, right? And that's because RAID 5 allows for 1 disk to fail at any given time, and the host, right, or that server would still maintain the integrity of its data. Okay, and if we add 1 more, then now we have the ability to go to a RAID 6, which allows for that 2 disk tolerance there, or again, 2 disks can fail at one time, and the data will still remain intact. But as you can see, it will eat up 2 disks or 2 drive days worth of data, right? So now we only have half at this point. Okay. All right. So let's get back to it, to the presentation here. So surveillance, right? So as I talked about, Synology does make surveillance products. I'll quickly go through this. So we make 3 different types of products, NVR. So if for those out there who want a couple of IP cameras at their house or at their small business, right? This is going to be a pretty nice little package for them, right? It's a cheap unit, less than $300, and it has the capability of managing and storing and backing up footage from up to 12 IP cameras, okay? It does come with 4 free camera licenses from Synology. It does have an HDMI out port in the back, so you can connect this directly to a monitor or an HD television. That's something that you cannot do with a regular Synology NAS, right? And also has a COM port, so you can connect to the older style POS systems. DVA, more advanced systems. Most people, if you don't know what a DVA is, chances are you're not going to need it. But a DVA is a high-end video surveillance server that has a built-in NVIDIA GPU chip in there that allows it to do more advanced things. So this is going to be deployed with my primarily government agencies or very large enterprises that want to do things like people counting. So you want to track people who are coming in and out of a designated area. The DVA is going to be able to count people, right? It's also going to do things like no idle zones. So, if somebody is in a designated area for an extended length of time, the DVA is going to be able to alert and start recording that person. Deep motion detection, intrusion barrier, stuff like that. It's going to have those types of capabilities. Now, last but not least, as a viewing station or a VS station, these are going to be deployed in guard booths and watchtowers and places where having a PC is not really feasible or not wanted, right? So it's going to be on a local network. You plug this right into a Ethernet port, and it's going to be able to view footage from IP cameras. Okay. Now, Synology actually does make routers, believe it or not. So we currently make 2 routers, the RT2600AC and the MR2200AC. So the great thing about these routers is that unlike traditional, I would say, basic router management software, right? These are going to have SRM, which is a management software that looks, I would say, a lot more like a standard OS than what you would see in traditional routers. The RT2600 is a pretty powerful router. It did win CNET's award on its inaugural, month of coming out to the consumer market, and it allows for advanced SRM features like, parental controls. You can set up, advanced threat detections, right? It also allows you, with 2 of these units, it also allows you the ability to set up site-to-site VPN access. So if somebody's looking to, set up site-to-site VPN, right, a Synology solution would be to deploy 2 of these RT2600AC models. Now, the MR2200AC is, can be standalone, but it's really meant as a network expander to that 2600 as a base, right? So that's going to create sort of that mesh style system, right, that a lot of people are looking for, and even that a lot of cable providers now that I'm seeing are trying to provide in terms of little nodes that you plug into your outlets, right? So very similar, concept, but a lot more capability, right? You have advanced parental controls and threat detection type of abilities, right? But also has like even a USB port in the back of it. So you want to, you have a I don't know, a 500 gigabyte, USB stick you want to plug into the back of this router, right? Now you have the ability to, share that space amongst all of your users on that particular network. So it does have some very unique capabilities like that. All right. Now, let's move along to what Synology is truly known for, right? A lot of people make hardware, but Synology is known for their software, right? We started off as a software company. We continue to invest. 60% of our current employees are, software engineers, right? And so it's really, based on Linux. So we do have a Linux-based operating system. And, most of it, as Jeff alluded to, is completely free, right? So a lot of the applications that we're going to be viewing today come 100% free to the user to download and use at little or no cost, and primarily no cost to them, right? If there's any cost or licensing costs, I'll definitely will point that out. But I believe all the product that we'll be viewing today in terms of the software will be free. Now, the great thing about DSM, right, is what we'll call it, right? Or the DiskStation Manager operating system is, really web-based, right? So, which is a nice thing, right? So when you're logging into the Synology NAS, right, you would do so by opening up a browser in Chrome or Edge or Safari, right? You're also able to, as you can see on the bottom left, utilize apps to access your Synology NAS, right? Whether it be a tablet or Android or iOS style device. Now, when we talk about DSM, right, so a lot of people might not think they need a NAS, right, or they might not know what they would even do with a NAS, right, until we start talking about the different types of features that you can truly do with it, right? So DSM comes with a little over 140 free applications. Now, within those 140 applications, we can really break that down into 8 core segments, right, that are perfect use cases for Synology NAS. Now, the first, right, is basic file sharing, right? So this is, SMB or SIFs or, AFT, FTP, there's a lot of different types of file sharing protocols, and 99.9% of them Synology is compatible with, right? So, you have, a PC and you want to be able to map a network drive to your Synology NAS, right? You're able to do that very easily using a DSM, okay? Now, remote management, right? So a nice thing about your Synology, right, is that it's obviously connected to, the internet, right? And as such, if it's not a local network, right, it's connected to the eventual WAN, right? You're able to access your NAS from pretty much anywhere in the world, right? And we'll demonstrate once we go into a Synology server. I'll demonstrate how easy it is to literally connect to your Synology server from anywhere. But that's through a proprietary protocol called Quick Connect, right? And Quick Connect, when you set up a Quick Connect ID, right? It's basically like setting up a VPN site-to-site handshake connection, and it's going to be able to securely, connect, a client to its host. Now, the next is backup and redundancy. So a NAS, goes beyond just being able to send files to the NAS or being able to pull files from a NAS, right? You can do things like backing up your laptop, right? So if your laptop, a lot of you probably own laptops or desktops, and you're on them probably now, right, with Zoom. If that laptop was to fail right now, right, and all the data was to be wiped clean, right, or you're hit with ransomware or malware, right, would you have that ability to pull that data from somewhere, right? And the Synology NAS has the capability of not only backing up the files on your laptop, but being able to do something called a bare metal image. So being able to basically take an image of your PC from the bottom, right, which is the operating system, all the way up to the users and the settings and the desktop and all that, right, which I'll show you. I'll spin up a virtual image of my HP laptop, my work laptop, and I'll show you what that looks like, right? And then you're also able to back up physical servers. So if you own a small business and you know, Jeff talked about QuickBooks and SQL and, you know, or if you have larger Dell or HP servers, right? You know, Synology has a capability of backing that up, right? As well as software as a service. A lot of us probably have Gmail. A lot of us might have Outlook, right? For our emails or SharePoint accounts, Drive accounts, OneDrive, calendars, contacts that are connected either by Office 365 or that are managed by Google, right? Synology has the capability to able to back that up and have an on-prem storage of all of that data that is being held within the cloud in case, you know, something was to happen to that cloud, that was be compromised, or if you don't have access to it, right? You're always going to have an on-prem solution, right, or on-premises solution to be able to access that data, right? Along with things like sending data to a USB drive or an external hard drive from your Synology, right? We have that capability. The next thing is storage and virtualization. Not going to get too much into the weeds for that, but you know, basically we could be, you know, the production storage for very large enterprise style, you know, VMware or Hyper-V servers that are being probably run on FS series servers or being run on HP or Dell or other types of enterprise level solutions out there. Surveillance management, you know, like I said, we don't manufacture IP cameras, right? But we have surveillance station which can manage them. We can store it, or we can even back it up, right? Maybe you currently right now own a business and you already have a surveillance system that's already in. Yes. Somebody have a question? Hello? No? Okay. So maybe you already have a surveillance system out there, right? And you know, it's working fine for you, but you're running out of storage, right? You know, Synology can be a backup target, and you can keep continuing to record your footage and store them on a Synology NAS, right? And the other thing is productivity and collaboration. So I'll spend a little bit of time on this because, you know, I think a lot of people, you know, like the idea, or maybe they don't even, it's one of those things where maybe you don't know that you would love it until you sort of understand it. But, you know, we have an application called Synology Drive, right? So a lot of people find that it would be nice that if you had a folder, right, a shared folder on your laptop or desktop, and anything that you dump on this folder, right, would be seamlessly backed up without any intervention from you at all to either a Synology NAS at your location or somewhere else within the world, right, seamlessly, right? Synology Drive actually gives you that capability, right? So with Synology Drive, you know, you can conduct seamless synchronization, right, of data from a laptop to a network attached storage, as well as vice versa, right? So anything that is manipulated on the NAS will be seamlessly synced to your workstation as well, right? So why would you need that, right? Well, if you have a lot of people that are collaborating on documents, right, it would be very nice to have Synology Drive, right? Instead of, you know, you working on an Excel document, then you editing it, saving it, attaching it in an email, sending it to that individual. They open it up, they see what you're doing, and maybe they want to edit something and they do the same process and send it back to you, right? It would be nice to open up that Excel document in a shared folder, edit it, right? And as you are editing it, right, within seconds, the person who's also connected to that shared folder could literally see in real time the edits that you're making, right? And be able to edit it with you as well. So we're talking about real-time collaboration with Synology Drive, okay? As well as having the capability of syncing multiple servers, right? So if you have multiple houses, or you have, you know, your house, your parents' house, right? And you know, you have, you know, pictures or videos or files that you want to your family members to be able to see in real time, right? Synology Drive allows you to do that. Okay. Now, multimedia. So this is something that's very unique that a lot of people utilize Synology for, right? Because, you know, a lot of our servers that have 4K transcoding on there, and you're able to manage and store and back up a variety of different types of multimedia content, right? And we have a lot of different types of applications, right? Plex and several others where you can even stream it to any DLNA certified device. So a lot of people will utilize, a photo station, video station, right? A lot of different types of free applications that come with your Synology NAS. So a very popular one for this would be Photo Station, right? So Photo Station is a nice way for you to be able to, back up all the photos on, say, your iPhone, right? So let's say you have an iPhone and you don't want to pay monthly for additional storage with iCloud, right? You can download a free app, right? That's a Synology app. And as soon as files or photos are taken, right, and saved onto your phone, right, they are seamlessly backed up to that Synology NAS. Okay. And then security and compliance. So in this day and age, right, everybody cares about security, right? And they see things about ransomware and malware, and it doesn't matter if you're a residential customer or if you're an extremely large corporation that we've seen recently, where a lot of companies are getting hacked, right? We saw Nintendo getting hacked, this a week ago, right? And data was compromised by malware or ransomware, right? So large corporations are being tracked and hacked, and that data could be compromised or worse, be encrypted, and now you have to pay them to unlock it or lose your data forever, right? And Synology has a lot of different ways, both in settings and applications, to ensure that you're not going to lose your data. Okay. I'll pause here and just open it up for any questions or concerns out there from anybody. So I do see a couple questions in chat. So,
ask a favor of you?
Yes, of course.
Could you describe the process of implementing a network for a small company? Maybe Adam can give us an example of a small company and their parameters, but I'd like to just hear what it's like to go through this and who does what and how much help you can get, and whether it's a do-it-yourself thing like setting up a new computer, or whether it's more, or a router, or it's much more complicated than that. I'd just like to get a feel for what all goes on.
Yeah, I mean, from two-step process, right? So first is that selecting the NAS, right? Whether it be Synology or not, right? We basically look for a couple of key things, right? What are you going to be utilizing the NAS for? And that's going to really determine on what series of NAS we select, right? Are you going to use it just to dump files to it? Or are you going to use it as a backup for endpoints, right? Do you have PCs or servers in your business that you would want that NAS to back up, right, and take images of in case of a disaster, or in case there's a fire or a flood, or in case somebody was to hack into your local small business system? You would want a Synology NAS to be able to instantly access that data, which we'll talk about here in the next slide, and with some of the capabilities that we have, right? The other basic thing is how many people are going to be accessing it, and also, do you want things like redundant power, or do you even want more redundancy, in an SHA cluster that we'll talk about, right? Now, in terms of setting it up, the NAS, I would say, unless you're somewhat tech savvy, right, you're probably not going to be able to, set it up yourself. We do have YouTube videos and knowledge bases and white papers on how to set up a Synology NAS, right? And it's not too overly hard, right? You populate, when we repopulate, you pop a couple of HDDs or SSDs into a Synology enclosure, you turn it on, right? It's an IP, network attached storage, right? So it's going to have its own IP. So you're going to download, and I'll actually do a little thing here. You're going to utilize something called Synology Assistant, right? So, which is right here, right? So I'm at my house, right? So it's only going to be one, my own personal, which is my own personal NAS, which is a DS2019 Plus. But Synology Assistant free application, you download it, and this is where you're going to be able to find all the NASs that are attached to your home network, right, or to your business network, right? It's literally as simple as identifying which IP NAS is on your system, selecting it, and then connecting to it, right? Now, if you connect to it for the very first time, right, then it's going to then prompt you to download the operating system to the drives, and you're going to set up a admin account, right? But you know, from there, right, then that's when it can get more complicated, right? That's when it can get more complicated in terms of being able to set up sharing, and you know, do you have multiple users, and do those users have different types of permissions, right? And then that's where people in the reseller business, right, if they're an MSP, that's where they come into play, right? Because that's sort of their job, is to help set that up and ensure that it's secure and all of that, right? So, but it is possible to set up yourself, but it's not something that we would generally recommend if it's for business use, because you could mess up some stuff, right?
And Jeff, that's what you do, right? Your company?
Well, we don't. So we don't. In terms of helping people set it up, no, we don't. So again, that's where resellers would come into play, right, or MSPs, right? So you know, we just basically would help you out from a technical standpoint in case something was to happen, if you need to reach, you know, technical support, right? But you know, like my job would be to work with, you know, Jeff, right, who's like, you know, MSP, and his job would be to work with small businesses like yourselves to help get it set up.
Okay, so that, oh, now you're unmuted. So Jeff, that's a service your company provides.
Yeah, I heard you mention my name. I think Josh missed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something, is I put out on the chat, very similar to setting up a file server. So if you understand the technology that goes into setting up a network that includes a file server, this is just another form of it. Would be the best way of describing it. But yes, I set these up all the time.
Got it. Thank you very much, both of you.
And then before Josh takes it back, if he ends and you know, at some point, I'd be glad to hang on and certainly demo some of it, run through some of the steps with you guys.
I'll leave that up to Adam, but thank you. Thanks for explaining that part.
Welcome.
Okay. And so I saw that John had a question. You know, he has a client that has 120 terabytes of data, video production, right? And around 40 employees, right? So which products or solutions would you recommend, right? Depending on how much of that 120 terabytes we would classify as hot data, right? So how much of that data is consistently being, you know, read and you know, whether it be read and write, right? That's sort of what we would get more granular to talk about the type of or the specific model that we would recommend, right? I could tell you that chances are you'd probably want a RS-36 17XS Plus, or at least an XS model, which is a rack mount. It's a 12-bay rack mount unit that is scalable up to 36 drive bays, and so you'd probably want something like that for that type of client. You know, especially if you're looking for, you know, 120 terabytes of data, 40 employees, they might be running on a 10 gig network, or there'd be RJ45 or SFP plus. So, you know, the XS series or above are going to have those PCIe expansion ports back there to be able to slide a 10 gig NIC card, and you know, you're able to provide either that or link aggregation. You know, basically linking multiple 1 gig ports together. And you're probably going to want redundant power, right? You know, I will have my contact information. I know Jeff will probably share his contact information as well. You know, if you have any more specific questions or you know, want to chat one-on-one about that as well. You know, I saw Will has a question. We have 5 terabytes of NAS on a network on a Windows 10 machine. This NAS is a legacy Buffalo link station. They use SMB1 and Synology hardware coexist on this kind of network. So if I believe I understand your question, and again, I'll have my contact information, so you can reach out to me one-on-one, but it sounds like the answer is yes. There should be no reason why we cannot coexist with that type of, with that network. If I believe I read your question correctly, right? But again, you know, please reach out to me directly, and I can provide more technical help from there. Okay. So let's go ahead and move on. Okay. And then the last thing I'll note by security and compliance, right? So a lot of people might own a business that needs to be HIPAA compliant or need to be GDPR compliant, right? So because we are TA certified and because we have a lot of different types of applications like snapshot replication. Any of our devices can be configured to be HIPAA compliant, GDPR compliant, as well as, you know, be compliant for many different types of different levels of security use as well. Okay. All right, let's continue to move on here. So now we're talking about backup and redundancy. Okay, so let's just say we have an SMB business, right? And this business has workstation on the left, you see here, right? And they are utilizing Synology as their main business file server, okay? Now, in this example, we have this active main business file server in a HA cluster, right? Which we call a high availability cluster, right? Now, why would somebody need a high availability cluster, right? Well, that's going to be for people who want the ultimate in terms of on-prem storage redundancy, okay? In a HA cluster or a high availability cluster, right, you're going to have an active server, right, which is that main business file server, that's going to be physically connected via a LAN port or a heartbeat connection, we'll call it, to a passive server. Now, this passive server is an exact identical copy of the active server, down from the model, the types of drives, the manufacturer of drives, the volume, right? Everything. It has to be an exact copy of it, and it has to be physically attached to a LAN port. So it's not something where you can put, you know, your main business file server in your office and your other server at home, right? We have applications that can do something like that, but not in an HA cluster, okay? Now, what does an HA cluster give you, right? If something was to happen to the main business file server, whether it be done by human intervention or not, right? You know, something, you know, happens to the power supply, you know, an admin messes up something in it, whatever the case may be, right? That main business file server is no longer operable, right? Now, without anything, right, from human intervention, right, this active server, right, goes down, and the passive server will conduct an automatic failover. Now, when an automatic failover happens, right, it will take over all the processes that was being currently conducted by that now not working active server. And the passive server, usually within a couple of minutes or less, will assume the role automatically of the new active server. Okay, and again, this is done 100% automatically. As long as you initially set up a cluster, everything I just described happens within a minute or two, and usually, depending on what the workstation users are doing, they're not even going to notice what happened. Okay, so again, this is going to provide you the ultimate in redundancy, because no matter what happens from a power supply, a individual does something to that server, right, or multiple drives fail within that active server, right, you're always going to have a completely identical, copy, right, sitting there in a passive state, ready to in standby, ready to take over in case something was to happen, right? So we see this a lot when I deploy Synology for a lot of hospitals, right? They need to be HIPAA compliant, and they want to have, ultimate redundancy in case something was to happen. So they put everything in an HA cluster, okay? Now, let's talk about if something was to happen to your business or even your house. It doesn't have to be a business. All these, what I'm talking about, could be easily, you can sell this on the terms of a residential type of deployment as well, right? But let's just say something was to happen to that production room, right? Fire, flood, whatever. But the workstation users, right, are fine, okay? And that business still needs to operate. But now their main business file server is dead. Or let's just take it another step further and say somebody hit this server with ransomware, right? And they encrypted everything. So basically, it's useless, right, at this point. So how does Synology ensure that there's a backup of that data somewhere that people can get access to and can continue their work or continue to access their photos or their picture or whatever it is, right? Videos. Well, we have two main applications that people use, right? One is hyper backup, right, which is really for both consumer and business applications. And the other is snapshot replication, which is really meant for an SMB or enterprise level style deployment. So Hyper Backup, which is the more popular of the two, right? Hyper Backup is able to take data that's already on a Synology NAS. Now this can be in a shared folder, or it could be within an iSCSI one, okay? And it can send that data to multiple different types of destinations. Okay, now we're just talking about the software at this point, right? And a couple of those different types of destinations, right? And the most popular one is a public cloud provider, right? So if you want long-term archival storage, let's say to S3, right? You know, Amazon's or Glacier, right? Dropbox, Backblaze, right? You want to be able to send data up to the cloud every so often, right? You like the idea of a hybrid cloud environment, right? You like the idea of being able to store years or several months worth of data on the cloud, but you also realize that the main disadvantage of the cloud is that it takes a significant amount of time to retrieve stuff from it if you're talking about a very large amount of data, right? So you sort of want that performance and the ease of use of on-prem storage, right? Hyper Backup is going to give you that capability, right? You have on-prem storage of the NAS, and then with Hyper Backup, you can send data as you wish with a retention policy, right, up to the cloud, right? And again, it's all 100% free that I'm talking about, right? Besides obviously paying the public cloud provider. The other thing it can do is it can send data to a USB drive or an external hard drive, right? So you want to be able to store, you know, encrypted data on the USB drive, you're able to do that, or an external USB drive, you're able to do that, right? Another thing that Hyper Backup can do is it can take data on your server, right, and send it to another Synology server or to a rsync server, right, if you don't want to do a Synology server. And that's what we see in this scenario, right? We see this server utilizing Hyper Backup to send an image of it, basically, right, every so often to a DR site, right, or a disaster recovery site, right, as offsite backup in case something was to happen to this production location. Okay? Now, what's this say, right? Let's go back to this scenario. Fire, flood, something was to happen here, right? Now, what we could do is that once this area is cleaned up, right, and they get a new NAS in place, right, what they could do is they have two options, right? Let's say they don't have the money to buy another NAS, right, but they have this one sitting over here, right? What they could do is they could pull it from its location and they can bring it on-prem once this site is cleaned up, right? And they can conduct a failover to make all that data read-write once again, right? And they can pull from the last, snapshot in time, if you will, right? Which could be as little as every hour, making it like nothing ever even happened, right? And it can, Hyper Backup can restore all your shared folders, right? iSCSI LUN data, the applications that you downloaded, all the user settings, right? So now you don't have to go back in, right? Just like you would when you buy a new laptop, right? You have to set up your account. You have to, set up all the other settings that you have to do, right? Think of it that way, that Hyper Backup basically takes an image of all of that. So you don't have to do that, right? You press a button, you conduct a failover, and it'll unextract all that data, right? Because it's going to compress it, and it does deduplication, right? So it's going to have to uncompress all that data, and then it's going to basically, whatever the last point in time you have, it's going to make it to like it was back then, right? Another solution that we have is snapshot replication, right? So on the top right here. And this is going to be for people who want near instantaneous access to their data no matter what, right? And want that data to be safeguarded in case of ransomware or malware, right? So this is primarily used for people who want either instantaneous access of their data, right? Because Hyper Backup compresses their data like a lot of other storage providers do or cloud backups do. They compress the data to save space, right? Just Hyper Backup does the same thing, right? Snapshot replication does not do that, right? You have 5 terabytes of data here. You send it to an offsite Synology NAS utilizing Snapshot. It's going to at least use 5 terabytes of data over there, right? But the benefit of that is that if you want to access the data over there, you don't have to wait to uncompress it. You can literally, you log in, you press a file, you download it, or you view it. It takes seconds, right, to be able to access your data in case something was to happen here. Right, now going back to the security part, let's say this server was encrypted, right? And that person was to have admin access to that server, right? To that Synology NAS. They're going to be able to see data being sent to here, right? And that person is going to be able to see data being sent to here, right? Now, if they have admin access, they're going to be able to manipulate the data here, right? Because they have access to the data here, right? Through DSM, you're able to, you know, log in and start manipulating and start deleting and potentially start encrypting the data that's over here, right? Now, they're also going to see data that's being sent via snapshot. But when they try to access this data, right, what this server is going to say is that, you know, our data is a read-only format, right? And because it's in a read-only format, you're not going to be able to access me. If you want to be able to access me, you're going to have to log in to my very specific instance of DSM, meaning that you have to, again, log into the IP address of this server, know the credentials of its DSM, to be able to conduct a failover to make that data read-write and then be able to manipulate it, right? And this data being transmitted is AES 256-bit military-grade encrypted, right? In transit and when the data is at rest as well, which data is not, right? So again, you know, you're not necessarily paranoid, but you want to ensure that your SMB business is you know, safeguarded against somebody who wants to hack in, right? And you have this server somewhere else at your home or other place of business, right? There you go. The snapshot replication will give you that access. Or again, you have a major natural disaster, you have a DR site where you can instantly access your data. Okay, and again, we'll show all of this here once we get into it. Okay. All right. Now, active backup for business, right? So we talked about data that's already on a NAS, right? But now let's talk about getting that data to the NAS to begin with, right? Beyond just basic file sharing, right? Beyond just, doing, SMB or SIFs or, a map network drive, right? Now we're talking about being able to pull data directly from endpoints, whether that be software as a service or whether that be, PCs, right? Physical servers, right? Or VMs. So let's first talk about active backup for business, all right? Now, active backup for business can back up 4 key things, right? The first is it can back up Linux-based and Windows-based PCs, right? And physical servers, okay? And it's able to do a bare metal or a file level images of those stations or servers, okay? The other thing it can do is it could back up individual VMs held within a VMware or a Hyper-V environment, right? Again, we're continuing all this. This is all 100% free, license free. This is all free, right? But now we're getting into BTRFS file system territory. So now we need that plus series or above type of NAS products, right? So once those backups are conducted, right, which I'll show you how that's done, there's multiple different types of restore options, right? So as you can see, right, the check mark indicates that you can do that type of restoration, right? So the first is a full system restore, right? And you can do a full system restore instantly to VMM. So literally with a Synology NAS, right? So we could think about it from even a consumer level, right? You take a laptop, right? I have an HP laptop, and I take a bare metal image of that HP laptop. HP laptop, 2 months from now, craps out on me, no longer working. I don't have that data backed up anywhere else besides my Synology NAS, right? What I can then do is I can take that bare metal image and I can spin it up within a hypervisor, right? So Synology has a hypervisor called VMM. And within that hypervisor, I can virtualize that ISO image, right, and spin up my HP laptop virtually within that hypervisor on my Synology NAS, right? Now that can be done in its increments as little as every 5 minutes, right, for 15 minutes for other different types of shares. So, it's not something where, it's like a Windows restore, point in time where it's once every couple months, right? This could be, an image that was taken an hour ago, right? If you have a working host, right, you can send that image to a VMware or a Hyper-V host as well, right? Or let's just say, you accidentally delete a folder or a file, or you just want basic versioning, right? Active backup for business also allows you to easily restore files, right, at a folder or a file level as well. But we'll show you here in a minute. Now, in the next is software as a service, right? Office 365 and G Suite, right? So I guess a question a lot of people ask is, why in the world would you want to back up software as a service to begin with, right? I get that question every day of my life, right? So there's a couple different reasons why you may want to, right? First is, just because ultimately, the Microsoft and Google is responsible for the infrastructure, right? Not necessarily the data within that infrastructure, right? So, usually they are very limited on the number of days that they will restore your data. And usually that limit, I believe, is 30 days around there, right? So if you want data held beyond 30 days, right, ultimately it's your responsibility to safeguard that data, right, is usually Microsoft's and Google's policy on that matter, right? The other thing is that obviously having data in the cloud, right, requires you to have access to the cloud, right? And if for whatever reason, you don't have access, your ISP doesn't have access to it for whatever reason, right? Having on-prem storage, right, connected through a switch gives you instant access to all that data, okay? And then also is speed, right? You want to be able to be able to recover inboxes and attachments and anything held within, OneDrive or Google Drive, right? Having an on-prem storage solution allows you to be able to do that within seconds, okay? So this sort of this easy to read graph here, sort of shows you the different types of, applications within 365 and G Suite that we can back up, right? So mail, right? Outlook, Gmail, right? Contacts that you are backing up within Office 365 and within G Suite as well, right? Any data within OneDrive or SharePoint, right? If we're talking about Office 365 or Google Drive, right? If we're talking about Google's Drive applications, right? Calendars, right? Now the great thing about this is that this is first and foremost a continuous backup, right? This is not a scheduled backup. It's not something that you would schedule that happen every day or every hour or every week, right? Because we realize people are constantly getting emails and adding contacts and accepting calendar and Zoom calendar invites and all that type of stuff, right? This is a continuous backup. So you get an email, right? Within seconds, right? The Synology NAS is going to take instance of that email and save it on-prem for you, right? It also does deduplication, right? This is more for business style applications, right? So meaning that, you have a university, right? And this university, the president sent out an email to all 17,000 users. I say 17,000 because Synology recently deployed this for a university actually in Boston. But they like the idea that if the president of the university sent an email to all 17,000 users, right, the Synology NAS would not save 17,000 emails. It would only save one email, right, or one instance of that email because it realized it was smart enough to know that all 17,000 people got it, right? Saving them a tremendous amount of data because you can imagine how much data that would actually add up over time, right? So, we call that deduplication, right? Another thing is, and we'll sort of explore this, is self-restore file restore portal, right, that anybody can access. And then allows you to search, inboxes and folders by wording, right? So you want to contact, you want to search by a particular contact, you want to search by, something in an email or even an attachment, right? You're able to do that. And then also this data can be restored in place or it could be exported, okay? That we'll sort of explain here. So I'll pause here, and I will pause for any questions. I believe, yeah, so that's my contact information. So I'll pause here, and I will open it up to any questions that anybody has in chat, or if, Jeff, if you wanted to say anything as well, please feel free.
No, I think we're good. I've answered a few more questions, but in general, I think we're good. I think people at this point, I don't know if you want to take a quick break or not, but I think people it's a good time to go right into the live DSM demo and, actually see see what it looks like, see some of the applications.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and then again, this is my contact information, guys. So if you need me for anything, I can't sell you anything because we don't sell direct. But if you have a question about a product, more than happy to answer it, right? Or point you in the right direction to help you answer it. So if you're SMB, owner, and you have a question about what NAS you should select, feel free to call me directly or to email me, or of course you can, reach out to Jeff as well. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions you guys have. Okay.
So Joshua, could you post your contact info in the chat?
Yes, of course.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So Jeff actually works with Jeff actually works with you, Josh, or is he like a local distributor?
Yeah, Jeff is a reseller. So Jeff helps customers buy this equipment.
Okay.
And helps them install them, get it set up.
I could touch base with either one of you because I'm thinking about it because of my organization. I mean, once we get the funding to go out and do something like this, because we have files and we have to be HIPAA compliant. So it does bring up the matter that, whatever I do, I got to have backup of whatever system I have so that if something should ever happen, I have that someplace. So I'll reach out to one of you guys, either Jeff or Josh. Thank you.
Yep, no worries. So let's go ahead and log into a Synology server here, okay? All right, so I wanted to show you how easy it is to do Quick Connect, right? So in terms of being able to access a Synology server anywhere in the world, right, I have it as easy as a link, right, within my web browser, right? So I already have a bookmark of it, and it brings me right to the login, right, screen of my Synology NAS that we're going to be using today in Albany, right? And I'll bring up another one just in case we have time and I wanted to show another one in Manhattan. But, it's easy as logging in, putting your credentials, whether you save those credentials or not, right, and signing in, okay? And once you sign in, Quick Connect is going to do the rest, right? It's going to create that site-to-site VPN secure access, right? And it's going to be able to, remotely log you in to that Synology server, okay? If somebody else is not currently using it, which hopefully they're not. Okay. All right, so let's do a quick rundown on control panel, the package center, the file center, right? So this is the home screen, which you're going to be brought to once you log into a Synology NAS, right? And as you can see, we have a lot of our applications here, just like you would in a Windows desktop, right? And we also have some more applications that we have that we just don't want on a regular desktop here, right? Like Cloud Sync and Active Backup for 365, Synology Drive, Video Station, right? But our more important ones are here, okay? Now, when we go to Control Panel, okay, this is where we're going to be able, and you can see a lot of the settings that you can manipulate here are probably a lot that are very similar like you would in a Windows environment, right? We have the ability to, update and manage external devices and set up task scheduler. We can even change the theme of our NAS, right? Set up notifications in case something was to happen, right? Maybe a backup task was to fail. Maybe a drive was failing, right? I want to be notified of that, right? Well, it's very easy, right? Everything, it's pretty straightforward, right? You want to enable email notifications, right? And you put in your email address, what provider that you have, right? Or you can enable SMS, right? Or push services, okay? And you can even get more granular, right? Maybe I don't want notifications for every little thing that happens within my Synology server. And I can get more granular and say, what type of notifications I want at any given time, okay? So another thing that you can do is shared folder, right? One of the very first things you do if you purchase a Synology server would be to create a shared folder, right? And that a lot of people can access, right? And so it's very easy, right? You have all of your current shared folders here, right? These are all test folders, right? But creating one is pretty simple, right? You want to name, right, that shared folder, right? Maybe you want to describe it, right? And then you want to put it in its place, right? Now, you might have more than one storage pool. You might have more than one volume within your Synology server, right? Especially if you have, 5+ drive bays within there, right? Maybe you have, 5 drive bays, a RAID 5, and then maybe you have like a RAID 0 on the other 2 or something like that, right? So you select where you want all that shared folder data to go, right? And then you can enable client-side encryption if you want, right? Now, please know that if you enable client-side encryption, you better have a safe place where you're keeping that encryption key, because if you lose it, right, you can't access the data. You have to reset the NAS, right? There's no other way to access it. You just basically lose it if you lose the encryption key, okay? And then you can set up more advanced features if you want, right? You can do things like check the integrity of the data every so often. You can also enable a folder quota, right? If you don't want it to use up all the available volume eventually within that particular volume, you can do that as well. And you press apply, and it's easy as that. Now, shared folder is created. And now you're going to tell the Synology, who do you want to have access to that, right? So I'm the admin, right? So, of course, I want read-write access, right? And so all the admins would have access to that. I don't want a guest to have access to that, right? I don't know who Joe Test is, so we won't give him access to it. And then Josue and Nelson are Synology engineers, so they're pretentious as it is, so we don't want to give them. We don't want to give engineers access to anything. They're just going to mess it up, right? So you press OK. And then the shared folder is created, right? And it's right there, right? So it's ready to have data being stored onto it, right? Using a variety of different types of protocols, or utilizing an application like Active Backup for Business and sending data to Test 12, right? If at any given time you wanted to edit that folder, it's as simple as pressing the folder, pressing edit, and again, we can go all to the different types of more advanced permissions and a lot of stuff that we just went over. You can edit that at any given time. Okay. File services, right? SMB, AFP, NFS, right? This is where you would enable that if you would want to do those types of file sharing protocols, right? As well as being able to add and edit current users, right? And then setting up groups or domains, right? This is where you would all do this in. Okay. You want to utilize Quick Connect, right, to be able to access this NAS anywhere in the world. This is where you would do that at, right, and enable your Quick Connect ID, okay? As well as other types of external access if you want to do things like DDNS, VPN, that would all be done here as well. Okay. Jeff, anything that I missed on the control panel that you wanted me to go over?
No, I just wanted you to take a quick, quick ride through it.
Okay. So we already went over File Station, right? So again, this is where all your files are being stored, right? So probably very familiar with File Explorer. This is going to look somewhat similar, or hopefully look somewhat similar to you. Again, that Windows File Explorer would, right? And it's simple as going to a particular folder, right? And you can see all of your data here, right? How much data is being utilized, right? You can go into the properties of that particular shared folder, okay? You can see the size of it. You can edit the permissions of a particular user. If all of a sudden you get rid of Nelson, we can delete Nelson, right? He doesn't need to be, we don't want him to have access to that. And we can save it, right? As easy as that. Now, let's say somebody wants this education flyer, right? You want to be able to share that, right? One of the basic premises of a NAS is being able to share information to anybody, right? So it's as easy as going to File Station, selecting where that file is located at and within that particular folder, right-clicking on it, and when you right-click it, you can see all the different options with your data, right? And one of them at the very bottom is share. And with this, you have multiple different types of ways you can share information within your Synology NAS, right? There's a shared link here, right? The individual file path, even a QR code, right? You want to send a QR code to somebody, they scan the QR code, they get instant access to whatever that particular, flyer is in this case. We allow to do that, right? But you can also get more granular, right? You want this link to only be good for a set amount of time, or the number of allowed access, right? You can set that to whatever many access times you would want, right? You can all manipulate that there as well. So it does allow you a lot of different types of shareability with that. Okay. All right, so let's move right along to the package center. So package center it's like an app store, right? It's where you would download all the different types of applications that you can on your Synology, right? And it's going to tell you if something is installed or something needs to be updated, right? So as you can see, there's a lot of different types of free applications that you can utilize on a Synology NAS, right? We have things like, antivirus, we have our own, you can pay for, mega fee if you want. We have hyper backup, which we'll talk about. Glacier is something that a lot of people might know, right? We have some Java applications. We have Mail Plus, which is Synology's, own application, right? To create, mail domains, right? We have surveillance stations. We talked about software that can manage IP cameras and store them, right? We have that. We have Synology Chat Server, right? USB copy, video station, VMM, which is the hypervisor, which will show you, VPN server, right? A lot of different types of applications, whether it be Synology or we work with a lot of different type of third-party, companies out there that make applications that work directly on a Synology NAS, as you can see here, right? DocuWiki, which we use internally. Docker, a lot of people utilize, right? Docker to be able to run, different third-party applications on a Synology NAS as well, okay? So a lot of different options here for you. So let's go into Storage Manager, right? This is where you're gonna, manage your storage, see the health of them, right? How much data are you currently using up? Which RAID, right? We don't care about data protection. We just put in RAID 0. We want the best performance possible, right? When we're doing testing. So we just put in RAID 0. We don't care, right? So again, you can see more details on the volume. If you have more than one storage pool, that would be here, right? This is where your drives are at. Who manufactures the drives, what capacity each drive is, right? So we have Samsung solid state drives that are at 0.5 terabyte a piece that are currently on here, right? The Evo editions, any hot spares, right? So think of a hot spare in terms of an active passive relationship, right? That we sort of tell you all Synology servers. So a lot of people in SMB or enterprise level environment will utilize hot spare, right? So let's just say you have a 4 drive-based Synology NAS. They're using 3 of them with current drive bays that are used for all of your data, right? But the 4th drive bay, you have another drive in there, right? Another hard drive in there. That's a hot spare. And basically what the hot spare would do is that it would be in a passive state. And in case one of those active hard drives were to fail for whatever reason, the hot spare would automatically, right, resume all of the current processes that was being conducted by that now failed drive, right? Again, that's done automatically, okay? So that's why you'd want a hot spare. And SSD cache, right? We do cache advisors, so a lot of people, come to me and they say they know about SSD cache, right? They've heard of NVMe and they want to know how to improve the transfer of very large files, right, on their Synology NAS, and so they want SSD cache. But the number one question I get is well, how much cache do I need, right? Well, a nice way to do that is by SSD Cache Advisor, right? And what this can do is you can let this run for a period of time, and the Synology NAS will track how much hot data your business or an individual is using. And when it does that, right, it's going to identify, okay, based on, how much hot data you're using, here's how much SSD cache, we would recommend that you have, okay? All right. So let's go to Active Backup for Business, right? So again, we're talking about pulling data to the Synology NAS at this point, right? PCs, physical servers, VMs, file servers, right? So I have my laptop, right? My work laptop connected as a physical server that's currently being backed up to my Synology NAS, right? You can see that when the last time it was backed up, right? The exact time, okay? Now, how you would add device is quite easy. You would install a lightweight agent directly onto that workstation, whether it be 32-bit or 64-bit, and then from there, you would enter the host credentials or the credentials of that Synology NAS. It would connect to it, and then it would conduct the backup task from there, okay? Now, let's say I wanted to restore that data, right? Let's say my HP laptop's working fine, but somebody messed up a folder, right? If Jeff accidentally, messed up a folder and we want to restore that, right? We select the device and we go to restore. Now, once we go to restore, it's going to say, here's the 5 different options I have to restore from, right? If you have a working host, I can send it there. If you have a VMM, right, which we have, I can send it there, right? I have a portal that you can view files that you've backed up, or if you want to create a recovery media to a USB drive that you want to boot from, you can do that as well, right? So we're going to go to the file restore portal because our laptop's working fine, right? As I said, we just want to restore individual folders or files. So we go to the portal, and as you can see, most laptops are only going to have one volume, right, like a C drive. So we're going to pick that volume, and you can see all the folders that were within that volume, right, as somebody just logged into the server as well. Doesn't like 2 admins logging in at the same time, so we'll kick them back out. All right, so we're going to go back to this folder, and you can see all the subfolders that were within it, right, within that volume. And, we can go to recycle bin, right, and we can restore a particular, folder, right, or a file. Now, we have 2 options. We can restore in place, or we can download that, right? Restoring in place basically says, all right, well, this file was found here, right? And when you press OK, it's going to restore that file exactly where it found it from. So it's going to basically send that file directly back onto your workstation if it still has a connection with it, right? In this case, it doesn't have a connection to it because we're all starting to work from home now, right? So it doesn't have access to the HP laptop. But if it did, it would send that data right back where it found it from, which is very nice, right? If you don't have access to the HP laptop, you would download it. And it's easy as downloading it, and you can open it up here, right? You can save it, or you can open it up. It's that easy. Okay, and you can do this not on just a file level, but you can also do it on a folder level as well. So if you want to restore the whole entire recycle bin, you're able to do that as well as utilize timeline versioning. So you didn't want to go to 430, you want to go back to 422, right? Or to a particular point in time, you can do that. Very easy. Okay? Now let's quickly go into what happens if my HP laptop was to completely fail. So now we're talking about spinning it up virtually, right? Let's kick this person off one more time. Hopefully get the hint now. People on the West Coast, right? All right, let's go to physical server, right? And we want to say, hey, my HP laptop no longer working. I need to restore it. I need to spin it up because I still need to do I still need to work, right? And my replacement laptop's not coming until a week from now. All right. So it's gonna say, okay, I can do this, but first select where do you want that restore point to be picked from, right? So of course, I want the most recent one, and then it's going to tell you, all right, well, where do you want the data that this virtual machine is going to create? Where do you want that data to be housed in, right? Now, 99.9% of the time, you're going to have only one selection, right? Now we have a cluster, so meaning that we can send this data to another another Synology NAS, out there, whether it be in Richmond or Manhattan or whatever, right? But chances are you're going to have one option there. Now from here, we're going to name this VM, right? We'll say test, okay? And then we're going to allocate the number of resources that's currently available on the Synology NAS to that VM, right? Because a VM is a particular instance of Windows in this case, right? Because the laptop was running Windows, so we have to at least allocate something to it. So we usually recommend for Windows 2 and 2 CPUs, 2 gigs of RAM, right? Press next. And then it's going to say, all right, well, where do you want that data to be housed in, right? Specify the disk configuration for a particular VM, right? Now, it's not going to allow me to go any further because I already have a VM running, so we don't have to go, more through this process to speed things up a little bit, right? So when you can press next, okay, it's going to bring you right here, VMM. It's our own hypervisor, right? And it's going to bring you right to this point. So we kept pressing next to that previous screen, right? It'll bring right here, okay? And it's going to say, I have a desktop or an image of a desktop running, right? And where is it running at? So right now it's running on a host. It's not running on the server that we're currently on, right? It's running on a more powerful XS server, right? And what we're going to do at this point is we're going to select that VM, okay? And we're going to connect to it. Now, when we connect to it, it's going to open up another window or another tab within our, within Edge. I think we're using Microsoft Edge, right? And then it's going to attempt to spin up a image of an ISO file, right? Now, it's going to take some time because this is actually currently being ran on a remote server, right? The Richmond server. So here we go. So as you can see, we are now, running a VM of Windows. Okay, it's that easy. Now, usually it'd be a little bit faster than this if we're running this on the host server that we're actually physically on, but you guys get the idea, right? So now, we're basically running a virtual image of that HP laptop we backed up on 4/30. Okay, so this will ensure business continuity in case something was to happen to that particular workstation. Okay.
Joshua, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
It's Adam. So I want to ask you, in that situation, you'd use your desktop for a while, pretending to be a laptop. And then one of your IT guys comes by and says, or women comes by and says, yeah, I'm asking a question Arthur's asking in chat. So guy comes by and says, hey, I've got an extra machine I ordered from Dell last month. Do you want to put your laptop on it? So he hands you the laptop. What do?
You would go here. You would create a recovery media. And you would put that into a USB drive, and you would plop that. This is a white paper on how to create a recovery media. You're going to download a software, and you would basically, it would put that image, right, onto a USB drive, and you'd plug that right into your, working laptop, and it would basically, boot it from there. Okay.
So I want to make sure I understand. I've got a laptop with a blank hard drive. I'm booting from that flash drive. I boot the machine, and then I attach the. So when does the machine get its operating system? It's not getting it from the flash drive, right?
It is.
So you're saying that the entire image is going to be on that flash drive?
Yes.
Josh, can I jump in?
Yeah,
of
please.
course.
The flash drive is just a stub of an executable that's going to restore you to the image that's actually out on the NAS drive.
So you're going to plug this blank machine into the network.
Right.
You're going to stick that in. You're going to boot from it. It's going to figure out that this thing's got a network card. It's going to pull everything into the machine.
Well, what's on that USB stick is enough to connect it to the NAS drive that's also on that network. So then it's got enough information that it gets the image that's sitting on the NAS drive and pulls it all through the network down and builds that machine. That's the bare metal build for that machine.
So a couple questions about that. If the
Josh,
hardware,
do you agree with that, Josh?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, yes, you could do that as well. Yes.
and if the hardware is dissimilar, will it still work?
If
it's not the exact same, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
It'll restore the image that's there. So so at that point, depending what that image is, I mean, if assuming it's got the drivers in it, it self-senses different hardware and is capable of adapting, then it may work.
I guess my question is like whether we have to get the same hardware. I mean, I know some backup systems claim like Acronis, claim to be able to restore to dissimilar hardware, and I've heard that it sometimes works. But is it something that you'd have a lot of confidence in, Joshua? Like, could I just go out and buy a laptop, attach it to the network, stick in the restore, and be pretty confident I'd be able to get my configuration on that laptop?
Yeah, I mean, your basic, so yes, and the reason why is I've seen that being done before, and it was actually from a Dell 2 and HP. But, you know, obviously certain things it will try to install that's HP related onto the Dell. And then some things, particularly just drivers, you're going to have to work out on your own, right? But the important stuff, right? The data, the settings, in terms of like the user settings on it, that will port over. But you are going to have, you know, you are going to have certain issues, in terms of, you know, stuff that HP was using versus Dell or vice versa. Yeah.
So just to give us a sense, suppose I plugged my laptop into a standard network port. What kind of time are we looking at to get the image back to the machine and get the machine turned on?
I mean, it depends on how much data is on that workstation. I mean, it could vary greatly.
Let's say not very much data, because
I would tell you, I've done it with basically, you know, empty machine, just the operating system, 5 minutes.
Oh, so it's really fast.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Right. I have a question.
On-prem, yeah.
Sure,
I have a question.
Please go ahead.
Actually, two. Is that boot like a Pixie boot, just enough to get it onto the network? And two, how much data does it cache, and how does it store it if a drive fails?
Sure. So yes, I mean, the first part to answer your question is, yeah, the information on the USB is like Jeff said, if you're going that route, is just enough to, you know, tell the new laptop, for this instance, that there is data out there that it's going to be pulling from, and then that it's going to have an image on it, and it's going to, you know, install into the new hard drive that's on that new workstation, right? So that the data on the USB drive is just to establish that initial connection, that relationship there. Now, in terms of your second thing, like where is the data being housed? Are you talking about where's the data being housed in on the Synology NAS?
Yeah, when, because you said that one of the drives is a hot spare. So how much data does it cache, and where does it store it? If one of the drives fails.
Sure. So it really depends on what RAID you have. I mean, it's going to share it. So for instance, all of this ISO data is being stored on your ABB or your Active Backup for Business shared folder within FileStation. So it's not meant for, you know, and it's sort of hidden, so it's not really meant for somebody to go logging in and view the data. Could you find it? Yes, but it's not really meant for that, right? It's just meant to store it in place, and VMM, right, is or you know, VMware or whatever you're using, you know, has the capability of being able to use that data and put everything together. But it's going to be striped across, you know, 3 drives, right? If you're doing like a RAID 5. So, you know, even if you lose one disk, you know, because RAID 5 is 1 disk tolerant, you know, you're not going to lose your image there. So you should be able to still use it in case of a disaster. But if you had a hot spare, like you were talking about, then, you know, the hot spare would just take over, and all that data would eventually be striped on that as well, right? So.
Again, this restore, I really do think that if you have dissimilar hardware, you're going to have some problems. I mean, you can't say that you have an Intel CPU and you restore it to a machine with an AMD CPU, it's going to work. It won't. I mean, if you have different video drivers, it might not come up. If you have different LAN driver, you might not. It's likely you won't connect to the network. I would say that if the more dissimilar the hardware is, the greater the chance that it's not going to work, and you're going to have to go through a lot of effort to get it to work, if you get it to work at all.
Glenn, I've done a bunch of testing on that, and It's a big, you're essentially right, but it's a big maybe, because if at the bare minimum, as long as the network adapter driver is working, Windows on its own is, once it can get to the internet, is very capable of recognizing that it's got an incompatible driver and then going out, searching, and doing an update. So different video driver, different video adapters, I've seen it tolerant of that. Now, if it's a completely different brand of computer that's dependent on some OEM specific drivers that like Lenovo wrote for its own notebooks versus HP wrote for its own notebooks, it's going to stumble. I've tried that, and and in that case, you're absolutely right. But up to the point where the operating system can come up, get to the internet, and then recognize it's got something inside it that's incompatible, it'll either automatically, or you can trigger a device search and have pretty good luck in replacing it.
So as I say, I think if you have a identical or a similar machine,
all the better.
You'll have pretty good luck. If you have a very dissimilar machine, you're not going to have very good luck.
I mean, I will tell you, during the testing phase, I spent a few days playing around, doing images, wiping out the hardware, swapping things out, doing bare metal restores, and was pleasantly surprised with, with success up to a certain point. But at some point, it just can't,
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll go real quick through hyper backup and snapshot, and that'll pretty much be it for this on-screen demo. Hyper backup. So again, we're talking about sending shared folder iSCSI LUN data to like a public cloud provider. Sending it to another Synology NAS or an rsync server, right? So pretty easy setup here. So as you can see, we're currently sending data to a USB drive to Synology C2. So Synology does have its own cloud provider software, right? So that's C2 there. Then we also have sending that data to 3 remote servers, right? So very easy. First, you would select what you want to send, shared folder iSCSI LUN data. And then you're going to select where you want that data to be sent to. So as you can see, if it's Synology related, right, USB drive, remote Synology NAS, or to Synology's cloud, which is called C2. Okay. If you guys want to know more about C2, you can literally Google Synology C2, right? It'll bring you here to features. You can go to pricing. You can view the current pricing model and basically pay by the terabytes. It's very self-explanatory on what you get and how much it is per month or per year, which again is about $7.50 in USD dollars. Our current data center is in Frankfurt, Germany, because most of our clients in the United States want to be GDPR compliant. So they need to be in Europe for that. Okay. So going back to the Synology NAS, the other thing we can do is non-Synology products like rsync server, right, would be the most popular in this category, or to a public cloud provider. So you want to shoot up data to Amazon's Drive, Dropbox, Backblaze, Azure, very popular one, right, S3, right? You're going to be able to send that data there as well, right? And if you say you select Dropbox, obviously it's going to want you to first log into Dropbox, right? Because it wants to ensure that you actually have access to that, and you're the person that has authorized access to that data, right? Or you would send it to like a USB drive, right? You want to send it to a USB drive. If a USB is attached, this would be in black as it is now. If you don't, it would be grayed out. Create the backup task, right? Select what shared folders you want to be sent to that USB drive, right? It's be the same process as it would be to anything else, right? So again, we're taking those bare metal images of our workstations. We want to back that up somewhere else, right? So let's back up our AVB file, right? Okay. Any applications that we want to back up as well and send that over, it would be here. And then we're going to enable our policy on how often we want that to happen, right? we want that to run, daily, on the weekends, and then when that day or that week hits, how often do we want that to be run, right? So, okay, press next, and then rotation policy that would be done here, right? So first in, first out. Smart recycle, which basically identifies the hot data again, and it will kick out data that is not being used very often, to kick that out first rather than the data that you most often use, right? Or you can set up your own customized retention policy there. And then you just press apply, and then it would again apply that back up to the USB drive. Okay. Snapshot replication. Again, sending data, HIPAA compliant, sending shared folder iSCSI data to another Synology NAS, right? You have all your shared folders here, right? iSCSI would be here. You would select the shared folder, right? And then you want to replicate that to another Synology, right? So in this case, we're replicating our active backup for business folder to the Manhattan server, right? So you can see that here. Okay. Now, if we want to recover anything, right? So again, we're talking about instantaneous, recovery here. So as long as we're taking snapshots of that, we're going to be able to access it, right? So it's easy as selecting your shared folder, pressing recover, right? Selecting the snapshot that we want to recover, and if we only want particular data within that, we press browse. We would open up File Station, and now we have instant access of any data that was within that snapshot. It's as easy as that, right? No uncompressing needed, right? If we want to completely restore in place our accounting folder, if somebody accidentally deleted the accounting folder, or the current accounting folder is corrupted, or whatever the case is, we want to overwrite it in place, then we would press restore in place, and it would overwrite and whatever is currently there, whether that be nothing, or if there's a current accounting folder there, it would get rid of it and put this one in its place. Okay. And that's pretty much it, Jeff, unless you had anything else that you wanted me to go over.
Joshua, thank you very much. I think you covered everything. Plus, I mean, you hit every item. The one thing I would ask you, Adam, I didn't realize until after Joshua took it that I didn't get to my very last slide, which had my contact information. So before you end it, I just want to do a quick screen share and pop that up.
Yeah, that sounds great. And Joshua, thank you so much for coming and sharing this with us. I found it really interesting, and I think this will be a tool that a lot of us will be using over the next years, and getting our first introduction to it is something special. So thank you very much.
Of course, no worries.
A quick question. As I understand it, we'd buy, say, a Synology box, and then we'd buy 2 or 3 SATA drives, put it in the box separately. Is that how it works?
Yeah, Synology does not manufacture drives at this point. So yes, what you could do is, let's just say when you select the product you want, right? So let's say the DS220J is the one that you would want. If you want to view the specs, you can view the specs here, right? But what you would do in this case for about drives is you would go to compatibility. And then you would want to see what it's compatible with, right? And so in this case, you want to see what drives are compatible with the DS220J. And then you can go here. You can, do it by class, which would just be NAS, right? You don't need anything besides NAS in this case. If you did want to, segment by brand, you're going to notice that Seagate, which is what we work most with, would probably be, have the biggest selection. And then you would, select your capacity, right? So 1 terabyte, and you could see what 1 terabyte drives, for instance, are compatible with that particular NAS model.
I'd be glad to hang on. I have 3 Synology NAS drives here. So I have one in front of me that I can hold up and sort of do a little bit of a hands-on and physically show it to you, and how easy it is to put drives in and out, and ports and whatever. And I can also, at that point, connect to one of my live ones and log into DSM and do visual and verbal explanations of all parts of the build, of the applications, or whatever people want. So this is a 5-bay, the model number is DS1513. I've had this one for about 5 years, and it's a box. slots in the front for removable drives, and a power switch, some indicators on the back, Ethernet connectors, USB connectors, eSATA connectors, couple of fans, one power supply. It's one of their Plus Series DS units. You really
So, Jeff,
want.
I'm reminded of the time you were talking about Lenovo laptops, and you said the most valuable part inside the laptop is the warranty.
Yep.
So I'm looking at this box, and I'm saying the most valuable thing inside this box is it gives you permission to use all the Synology software.
Well, that's why I wanted to show this to you, because it's not your grandfather's NAS anymore. And for those of us who go back far enough in an odd kind of way, you go full circle, reminds you a little bit of a NetWare server, where yes, it does need applications that run on it that are specifically written to it, but other than that, it is a self-contained powerhouse. Back to the front, what I was going to show you is, and hopefully you can see this, is you've got, removable empty slides. You can put a 3.5 or a 2.5 inch drive in. You just, pop the drive into the slide, put the slide in, lock it in, and it's connected and good to go. That simple. So they are hot swappable. Obviously, with the multiple drives, you're not only building, the storage capacity of multiple drives, you're also choosing which, and if we want to get down and dirty, start talking about the different RAID levels, RAID 0, RAID 1, RAID 5, RAID 6, RAID 10. That defines how many disk drives you're going to need and what the total storage you're going to get out of those. And again, if you remember, he showed you that RAID calculator. He didn't get into it too deeply, but that was really what that tool is for, because you can now pick your RAID level, what the capacity of the drive's in, and just put those numbers in, and it will tell you, not only will it tell you what your final capacity is going to be, but also at the same time tell you which NAS devices can support it. So it's in a sense, it's a little bit working backwards to your solution, but you can very quickly see if you want RAID 5 or you want RAID 6 or you want RAID 10 or 20, and you've got 4 terabyte drives and you want to have 20 or 50 terabytes of total capacity, very quickly do the calculations for you. Make sense? Questions? Anybody?
Keep going, Jeff.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if I was still running or not. So that is, that's the box. So where would you like me to go next? One of the things I thought I could do, there were a couple of questions about configuration and how to build it. Is that something that I should dive into? Or give me some direction as to what you'd like to hear about it.
I, for one, would really like to see the software in action. I'd really like to see, once you've got this thing working, how you manage it.
What I was going to loop back to is to go into the control panel that I know he was in a bit before. And very similar to the control panel of a Windows file server, where you're going to have a combination of various utilities for controlling the hardware and controlling, in this case, their version of Active Directory, which is going to spin around users and groups and sharing and access rights and who can see what and who can change or read or open what. So that top layer of that top row that has all the file sharing, that's mostly what that is. And also, as I said, you can insert the box into Active Directory, and then at which point it'll automatically pick up all of the AD attributes and override most of most of the of its own settings. So for those of you who are familiar with building a file server, very similar. Starts with a box, put the drives in, turn it on. It's going to recognize that it has, that it's a new build. So wizards are going to guide you through. But in terms of the steps, you're going to find them very familiar. You're going to want to recognize the number of drives that you have, pick a RAID configuration, if at all, to put those drives into. At that point, it's going to build a volume for you. And the first thing you're going to do is build either one or two partitions or as many partitions as you want, and pick a partition type, a type of file system type, just as we do on a Windows box, whether it's FAT32 or, an FTS or, there's many that Synology will support. And to loop back into, I guess, part of what Joshua was saying is that the box itself is very easy to build. By the same token, there's a lot of choices because it tries to offer as much as it can to everybody. So even though it's easy to build, it's easy to build right, or better yet, easy to build it in the best possible way to match your environment and match your requirements. So what happens is that unless you're somewhat adept at understanding the nuances of these decisions and picking the best thing for you, you'll get it running. Work with it for months, load terabytes of data on it, to one day find that you selected some answer to some question that wasn't the optimum, because now there's a particular application you want to run or a certain thing you want to do that you can't do with that file system. Or you intended to do some operation when you got to it, and then 6 months later find out that you can't do it because you picked the wrong choice. And it might be something you can change, but it just easily could be something that's unchangeable. And at that point, your only option is to unload all that data, go back to the initial build, reconfigure it the way you'd want it, and then reload all that data. It's doable, but you can find you wasted days. And without getting into the mud about it, I think that is the point that Joshua was making, that when you're going to do this in a business environment, it helps to have somebody who has built one of these, or built many of these actually, who can ask you the right questions, pick a lot of the right answers to questions early on. So the way you get the device configured is the way you really want to run with it from that point going forward. And that's that's where experience kicks in, as I'm sure you guys who have done file servers, very similar. So that.
Jeff?
Yep.
So so the day that you get the Synology server in, say for instance, you got it at your house, you're ready to set it up. How long does it basically take to set up from opening the box and getting it to a point where you have all these files here and you're ready to you're gonna literally hook it to a network where I have a small network here at the house, and I need access to it so I can get to my organization's files to it, and other people can share on that. How long would you think it'd take?
I would say from when I open the boxes to when it is a working, useful device for me is maybe 1 to 2 hours. Now, the next thing is, at that point, you're gonna, the big thing is putting your data onto it. So depending upon how fast the unit is, what kind of drives you have in it, how fast your Ethernet connection is, you're going to spend days restoring terabytes of you might have files even if you were organized, and even if you had, say a 5 or a 10 terabyte USB Western Digital drive that had all your files laid out, some background noise.
Is there a certain type of drive that the Synology is probably best used on? What type of hard drive is it best used on?
Well, and this is the thing, if you understand drives, to begin with, your choices are going to be between everyday SATA drives, SCSI drives, and now, of course, you've got SSD. You can mix, you can match, you can use SSD for caching with spinning hard disks. Typically, you're going to be using SATA drives, and those are either going to be 5400 or 7200 RPM drives. Secondly, if you look at companies like Seagate and Western Digital, which are your predominant, spinning hard drive companies, they're going to have different classes of drive. Seagate does it by name, Western Digital does it by color, where, a Western Digital blue drive is a 5400, sometimes 7200 RPM, but a desktop grade quality drive. Really not the kind of drive that was designed to be going 24/7 weeks and months and years. Versus they will have other colors of drives that they'll categorize as surveillance drive or a NAS drive or an enterprise drive that have much higher, the acronym is NBTF, mean time between failure. These are drives that are designed to go into file servers, into storage devices, that lots of people are going to be hitting 24/7, that, that are going to go for years and years. I mean, the better hard drives have 5-year warranties on them. A typical desktop drive has a 1-year warranty.
Hey, Jeff?
Yep.
Along those lines, is there any measurable difference between a 5400 RPM drive and a 7200 if you're shopping for drives and you have one of each that have the same mean time between failure?
Well, the answer is that depends. And the depends part is on how you're going to use it, because those drives are going to have a certain amount of cache in them. And they're pretty smart. So if you're doing a lot of repetitive access to files that you use a lot, and those files aren't too big, then there's almost no practical speed difference. However, if you're going to be pushing large drives, and large is variable in comparison. I mean, a cheap drive might have, 64 megs of cache, or, a better drive might have, a quarter, 256 megabytes of cache, or maybe 512. So depending on how you use it is the answer. And you can go to websites, and I don't know the names of them off the top of my head, but you can see the performance of all those drives. And what you're going to see is they are tested repetitively in different ways. Sometimes they're tested with a bunch of small files or several large files, heavy on the reads, heavy on the writes. And you pay attention and try to match that up to your expected usage. If, I understand how Steve Eisenberg is doing, large videos, is different than an office environment that's doing a bunch of small Word and Excel documents. And it can make a difference in those environments. Synology does not sell drives, but what can happen is you can go on the consumer side, you can go like to a B&H Photo, and they will sell you a Synology drive that has a couple of hard disks or 3 hard disks already installed, because they'll do some packaging for you. You will find that on the consumer side. On the commercial, the business side, on the big stuff, you will never find that, because that is so individualistic. And the types of drives that a business wants, a business is willing to spend an extra $100 or $200 per drive for a better quality, because that's nothing to them in a box that they expect to run nonstop for 5 years. And this is where you start splitting hairs, because depending on, you might want to buy a drive that holds 2 4-terabyte disks, or you might want a drive that's got 4 2-terabyte disks. I mean, in the end, 2 times 4 and 4 times 2 still adds up to 8. But I can tell you those 2 boxes will perform significantly differently. Sometimes you're better off spreading the data out over multiple drives. Sometimes you're better off condensing it over fewer drives. And that's where, the expertise comes in. Do you want 2 4-terabyte drives that are mirrored, or would you rather have 4 2-terabyte drives that are using RAID?
A lot of the software that Joshua talked about,
Yes.
that comes with Synology, have you used a lot of it? Have you found that it's worked well, that it's been reliable?
And that's an excellent question. And I hate people that say that's an excellent question. But what I would tell you is I can't say I've used a lot of it in terms of quantity. I don't have need for a lot of it. I mean, there's 140 plus applications. I have used maybe 10 or 12 of them that I have pounded. And these applications are constantly, I mean, he made the comment that 60% of their personnel are software engineers.
Yeah.
The hardware side of it is really cut and dry at this point. They work like crazy on their software. A certain percentage of it, I don't know, 20, 25% is Synology, internal Synology designed and produced applications. Those things are rock solid. They've gone through so many iterations. They have been whittled down to to the most simplistic view, the easiest GUI they could possibly make it, while at the same time asking you the right questions and gathering the right answers. So you can look at this stuff, and if you've got experience with, similar products from other companies, it's just intuitive. And, that active backup for business, the hyper backup, the snapshot replication, it can get a little dicey at the far end when you're talking about virtualization or multiple, NAS failovers to multiple NAS boxes or whatever. But for its basic everyday use, the stuff just works. And to me, that is the real strength. I consider it like a no-brainer bargain, because the amount of utility you get out of this, for the price of the empty box, and the cost of the drives, the amount of utility you get out of these things is just, and I started by talking about, having problems with Windows 10 sharing. I'm doing away with it. I mean, every one of my customers at the very least has got one of these, if not something bigger, if you're talking Windows servers or Nutanix boxes or whatever. But I'm walking away from vanilla sharing. To me, it's, the value you get out of this is just a no-brainer.
Are you replacing your Windows servers?
No, I'm not necessarily, well, I take that back. For some of my companies, I am. And I'm not saying I'm replacing them because this is better. I'm replacing them because I have some companies that had Windows 2008 servers that went end of life, and they've got to replace those. And I am looking at them, and these are companies, and thank you for that ad, telling you, go back to 77. I've had most of my customers for decades. And I'm pretty comfortable knowing who they are and what they are and where their future lies. And I got a bunch of them that just do what they do day in, day out. And I'd be shocked if anything greatly changes in them. So the answer to that is some of them who now need to update their Windows servers, I'm looking at them going, you don't really need a Windows server. If you haven't needed to run MS SQL by now, you're never going to need to do it. You do
Yeah,
not
no,
need
I have
any-
people who need SQL servers.
Right. And so you need Windows. Now, that doesn't mean one of these boxes can't be a wonderful addition to a Windows server. And for some of my companies, it really is, because it's a storage target for their backups, and it is the pathway for them to get to the cloud. And I made a, you know, and I really wanted to go quickly because I wanted to give Joshua the, you know, the bulk of the time, because you know, I worked with him on his presentation. I knew it was going to be long. So I spoke faster than I really wanted to, but I wanted to give him the meat of it. That little comment that I made, that I mentioned that, you know, this box has the ability to compete with like a Datto or a Zerto. I don't know if who picked up on that or what it means to them, but basically, if you understand those companies and what that technology does, you're in a regular Windows environment. You've got a supplemental storage target that you're backing up to. So now you've got a redundant copy of your data sitting in a freestanding box that has the ability to spin up your servers as a VM, and also can be a gateway to push your data up to the cloud. Now, those companies are targeted heavily at MSPs. So their boxes are relatively inexpensive, but they make their money off of ongoing revenue. On the other hand, you buy a Synology NAS, you can get pretty much the same functionality. You can choose whether or not you even want to go to the cloud or go to a removable device like a USB disk. But he mentioned that website, that cloud service they have, that C2. Take a look at the pricing on that. I mean, it is cheap.
That was amazingly cheap.
It is cheap, and if you use it, it integrates automatically to the Synology NAS. So all you've really got to do is enter the credentials, and it does everything else for you. You don't even have to understand the cloud. It is just, you know, they make it easy.
Does that C2 only work with a Synology box, or can anybody use it?
I don't know the answer to that. I would suspect you can buy it. I don't know. I would think it does, but that's something you'd have to research. Certainly not anything I've done. I mean, the only thing that throws you back a little bit is it's priced in euros when you look at it.
At least it's not Bitcoin.
True. Now, you'll notice if you do take a look at it, what you really want, they have something called level 2. That's what you want to buy, because not only does it automatically support, all the advanced features of the Synology NAS, but that's where it does the deduplication. It has a lot of extra features built in that supports, the best of what Synology has to offer. So again, from a business environment, that's, it's a no-brainer.
Jeff, do you have any tough stories to tell us about Synology?
Do I have any what?
Tough stories. Have you had any challenges that you want to share with us?
No. I would tell you it's a layered product. So everything looks easy on the surface. I have never had one fail. And I would tell you, I have done, everything from the little 2-drive, home type boxes, which I discourage. And I'll loop back around that. All the way to, you know what I do with, with Nutanix? Those big rack mount boxes, I use those as storage targets for Nutanix backup. And that's because I want to take that backups onto a completely separate device. So I'm building those rack mount units that are, 100, 150, 200 terabytes in size, and using those with 10 gigabyte Ethernet adapters. And I mean, they work perfectly. Never had one fail. I can tell you I've had, an occasional drive fail. That's what RAID is for. You identify it, you replace it, and it restores, and you're good to go. The company's been great with me. No, the learning curve can be, is, like I say, there's always layers. And probably the most time-consuming thing is going to be, data loads, because it takes a certain amount of time to push, tens or hundreds of terabytes. That initial data load can take days. After that, everything's an update. That active backup for business is block level with deduplication. So it's constantly watching what you're doing, and all it's doing is pushing deltas, data changes. So your backups, everything beyond the first data load is the blink. Now, to loop around and talk about picking boxes, at first glance, you're thinking about capacity. How many drives can it hold? How big are the drives? What can it all add up to? I've got 5 terabytes. I got 10 terabytes. What's it going to take to hold the data? Right behind that, and as you gather more experience, performance comes in several regards. The first piece of it is, as NAS traditionally was, is data sharing. How many users, how much file is going to be, how much data is going to be pushed in and out of this by how many users? And that's your first layer of performance. However, now that the thing is a file server and can run applications, all of these applications also need CPU cycles. So when you start looking through the list of applications and say, okay, not only do I want a file share, but I want to do backups. I want to do, hypercloud. I want this to be an audio station. I want this to be a video server. I want this running antivirus in the background. I mean, you can look through 140 applications and easily pick, oh, that would be nice, this would be fun, this would be an addition. All of those applications are going to be loaded, running, and using cycles out of this, and when you look at these boxes, you'll see there's a variety of CPUs that you can get in them. And that's the second piece that you've got to pay attention to, because it's very easy to buy a box that starts out being very capable. And then when you start loading more and more applications, it bogs down. Now, you can always add drives, you can always add RAM. You can't swap out a CPU. So you saw those families, the J series, the regular DS series, the Plus series, which is the entry level into the business. You want to consider those. It doesn't hurt to buy a more box, because I swear to you, the more you use it, the more you want to use it for. And one of the things that happens is you see these things start to slow down as you start adding more and more apps to it. So I don't find the price difference to be that significant, certainly not in a business environment. My customers, they're not saying I won't spend an extra $100 or I won't spend another $200 for something that's 2 or 3 times faster or has, a CPU that's twice as fast. So we've got some good application growth capacity built in. And because I've been doing this long enough and I'm experienced at it, quite frankly, I've even backed away from doing, sometimes in the old days I would do the good, better, best, and you can buy this for this amount, you can buy this one better for that amount, and this one. I don't even do that anymore. I sit with them and I say, this is the one you want. And if anything, I upsell them. But I got to tell you, you're adding $100, you're adding $200, knowing that down the road, I mean, this thing is going to perform as well as it started out a year or two later. They're not going to be looking at you going, what happened to it? So that's my philosophy with picking them. And again, when you're looking at the selection, not only focus on, the capacity, because these things can grow quite large. Let's face it, you can buy, 4, 6, 8 terabyte internal drives. I mean, you can get 10 plus terabytes in a 2-drive NAS. But that's not the only thing you want to consider. Good?
Yeah.
What else? I know I've got the application package center open. Behind it, I had the control panel open.
Hey, Adam.
Jeff, have you done a restore?
Just gotta know the hole in the wall.
Somebody's talking, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, hold on, please. Please mute, Steve. Thank you. Jeff, have you done a restore, a data restore on one of these?
I would tell you that, every couple of 3 years, I loop around on my stuff. And I just bought a brand new one of these, which I actually bought partly for the March meeting. And unfortunately, the shipping got delayed on it. It was one I really wanted that they didn't have. It was a couple weeks delayed. That's part of what took me, off of March, because that was the model. You saw him demonstrate how you can spin up a VM now. The older one I had, it was too old. That was something that was added maybe 3 years ago. So I bought a brand new one with that capability. And with that, I sat down and I just, like I was starting from scratch. I just went back to school on them. So I built and rebuilt it 2 or 3 times. I did backups, I did restores, I did bare metal, bare metal backups, blew out the machines, did bare metal restores on notebooks and PCs. I did, I have 3 of these units running now. So you saw that picture where you can have failover, you can have, one NAS backing up to the other NAS, on-site, off-site. I did all of that. And boy, there's nothing that's going to teach you better than actually physically doing it yourself.
Yes.
But I would tell you that in the end, everything worked exactly like it should. When it didn't, it was my lack of knowledge. It was me screwing up. Once I finally figured out or talked to Josh, that guy he's a salesman and he's a technician. He's good.
Is he your main resource?
He is right now. He's assigned, he's my account manager for Synology. He's assigned to the New England region. When I need to reach into the company, I go to him first. If he can't answer, he gets me the answer or puts me in touch with somebody. I have other people because I've been with them for 10 years. Josh has been on, I think, about somewhere between 1 and 2 years. So I can reach to plenty of other people that I've known for years. But, there's a channel and, I'm supposed to go to him. Frankly, I don't have a reason to go around him. So
whenever you've had a technical support issue, you contacted him.
I can contact him. I can go straight to tech support. I'd rather go to him.
Yeah.
And if he tells me otherwise, because he has his own technicians in Washington. And usually they handle whatever I want. Otherwise, I can go straight to Synology, in Washington, straight to their tech department. And there may be a reason to, but usually it's not something that I will do myself. It would be some question that is very, very specific. And I do have some very down and, the hooking it up to Nutanix was dicey. I'm in the process. Another thing, I mentioned how I'm replacing my small business customers with these NASs. That's very cut and dry. Another thing is I'm involved with 3 or 4 regional security companies. that I handle their technology, because nowadays, you know, security cameras are IP based. You know, these guys don't really understand networks and IP addresses and whatever. So I do a lot of the, you know, I help them with a lot of the tech side of the networking that they're getting involved in. And I'm starting to show them Synology with their surveillance station versus they're used to using a dedicated, well, it used to be a DVR, now it's an NVR. You know, it's not a digital video recorder, it's a network video recorder. And this is an alternative. This technology is an alternative to that. That makes a lot of sense. So I am showing this technology to security companies who are very, very interested in it. And they are asking me very technical camera-based questions that I really can't answer, that Joshua and his tech really can't answer. So those kinds of questions are going back to Synology, and their IP security specialists are getting back to me.
Can you use some simple IP cameras for a small business?
Can you ask me that again? I don't know. I don't know the question part of what you asked me.
All right, for a small business,
Yes.
they want to just have surveillance of a warehouse.
Oh,
They don't want-
absolutely.
Yeah, are there inexpensive cameras? I mean, it's not a big company.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there were cameras, I don't know what you call inexpensive. There were cameras that are 40, 50 bucks.
Yeah, are they decent? Which brands? You don't want the Chinese ones with the
Well,
security issues.
if you go onto their website, just like you can look up disk drives, you can look up IP cameras that they've tested to be compatible, and you're going to see thousands of them. Now you filter that. You can select by brand, by how many megapixels, by, you know, what kind of compression technology, by lots of different parameters. And then, you know, the only thing you can't on their site compare by is cost, because they don't have, the retail cost of those cameras up. That's something you have to research. But, you go through that and you pick out whichever cameras you think are appropriate, and then you go off and, just like the disk drives, buy them and you use them.
Jeff, I think this is probably a good place to pause. You've been a hit. So I really appreciate your sharing this with us.
I am just as happy with everything they've got and everything they do today as I was 10 years ago.
That speaks really well of this company. All right, folks, so we should wrap up.